the Metropolitan Council. Today is Wednesday, January 24th, 2018, and I call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes from our January 10th meeting. Can I have a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item on the agenda is the public invitation. Is at this point in the meeting, members of the public who wish to address the council on matters that are not on the agenda may do so. But because we canceled the January 22nd Transportation Committee meeting due to bad weather, I will plan to allow members of the public to comment on business items 2018-27 SW, 2018-28 SW, and 2018-29 SW during the discussion of those items. So if folks have comments basically on those three transportation items later in the meeting, you'll have an opportunity to address the council at that time. Is there anyone that signed up or would like to address the council? Okay, hearing and seeing none, then we'll move on to the next item, which is an information item on the annual Metropolitan Airports Commission report. We'll hear from Bridget Reef from the MAC. Ms. Reef, welcome to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm going to offer my apologies from Brian Ricks, our CEO. He was not able to be here today to present to you, so you're stuck with me. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things going on at the airport, just touch on a couple of things that you probably see a little bit of in the news, maybe not, and not just talk, my purview is obviously all the construction going on. So I have to start by saying, if any of you have problems at the airport with construction, call me. It's my but we're going to talk about a couple other things in addition to that today. So let's start with the operations in our air service, just to give folks a little idea of what's happening. So these are 2016 numbers. Our 2017 numbers aren't quite in yet. We're expecting them in about a week. But we're expecting in 2017 we will exceed our highest ever number of passengers at the airport. And we'll be upwards of 38 million passengers. If you recall from our last long-term comprehensive plan, and I'll talk about this in a few slides, we are expecting to be well over 50 million passengers by 2035. So clearly that upward trend is continuing. With regard to the airport itself, just to give you an idea of who some of our peer airports are, we participate in an annual customer survey. It's a passenger survey that a number of airports across the country participate in. And we basically ask a bunch of questions about how was your experience, how were the restrooms, how was parking, how was TSA, those kind of things. And then they all get scored, and that's called the ASQ score. And last year we were number one, according to the ASQ score, for overall airport experience. And so these are some of the airports that we compete against in that survey. The other metric that we use is our cost per enplaned passenger. And the reason that this is important to us, in particular in Minneapolis-St. Paul, is because we're known as flyover country, right? So we want people to choose our airport to connect through, typically when they're flying Delta, instead of choosing one of their other airports. And one of the reasons why Delta will encourage passengers or provide routes that come through MSP is because our cost per enplaned passenger is really low. One of our airport goals is to stay in the lower third, lower fourth of this list of airports. So on this slide, if you can't, they're pretty small. It's $6.39, which is really pretty good. In 2018, that's going to bump up a little bit to $6.57. That's how much Delta has to pay per passenger in order to operate out of our airport, is basically the way the numbers work out. You look at some of the other airports on the list, well over 10, 12, some over $20 per passenger. And a lot of that is based on location, the amount of construction going on, and some of those. So we pride ourselves on having such a low number. In 2016 and 2017, we had a lot of service added to our airport. So this is significant. We're expecting in 2018 we'll have some additional routes also added to the list. The thing to note is that out of our 162 direct destinations, 55 of those have competition on them. And that's really key for us to have that competition because that keeps our airfares low. And then just destinations by airline, just wanted to acknowledge or give you an idea of how many nonstop destinations we have per airline. JetBlue is supposed to start in May, so they will start showing up on this graphic. And then we'll see what happens with Sun Country. They are changing their business model, as you've seen in the news, to become an ultra low-cost carrier. So they will become solely focused on cost and start to operate a lot like Spirit Airlines. So we will see what that means for us going forward. All right, just touching on trends a little bit. I just mentioned our fares are declining. So this was a slide that we saw at Brian's State of the Airport luncheon in October, but it is still the case. We certainly peaked a few years ago, and airfares continue to decline, and having that competition at our airport specifically is really good and very helpful for that. And again, having that low cost per in-plane passenger also helps with our fares. And the Delta hub remains strong. We are considered by Delta as their *2 hub. They have been putting a lot of resources into their coastal hubs, Seattle, some of the California airports, to try to build some of their transoceanic flights, but they continue to focus on MSP as well and send a number of their passengers through our airport. Other trends, TNC, so the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world are impacting airports all across the country, right? They're taking business away from taxi cabs. They're taking business away from rental car companies. We do not know yet if at our airport they're taking away our parking revenues. At the beginning of 2017, we raised our parking fares, and that always causes a decline in parking for a while, and then it starts to build again. So we need to see yet what kind of an impact the TNC network companies are having on our parking revenues, but they obviously continue to grow. And at the airport, they are required to have a specific permit in order to operate at the airport. Prior to just a few weeks ago, we had over 2,000 drivers permitted through the airport. Now with the Super Bowl coming up so fast, we're well over 5,500 now permitted TNC drivers to help meet that need coming in about 10 days. The other thing I wanted to note was the security enhancements. So if any of you have flown recently, flown out of Terminal 1 and gone to the north checkpoint, which is the bigger of the two, it's the 10 lanes. If there's a K9 team operating by the TSA, everybody at that checkpoint becomes basically a pre-check passenger. You don't have to take off shoes, you don't have to empty out your bag, you don't have to show your liquids. It speeds the entire process up and makes all the lanes pre-check. So the TSA is up to, I think, 7 K9 teams now. They operate on they have a rotation schedule. There's a limitation to how long the dogs can operate. Come Super Bowl, we're bringing additional K9 teams in to help keep those checkpoints open on a 24-hour basis from game day and then well through Monday, the day after. And I'll talk more about Super Bowl at the end. Another trend is all of the events that we have coming to. Now, we don't take credit for this, but we have to prepare for all of these events and manage the passengers and be prepared for the influx of folks as they come through. But it's really exciting to see a lot of different events coming to our Twin Cities area. And then, of course, the other trend is social media. And at the airport, we spend a lot of time focusing on social media. We have staff that is dedicated to responding to social media inquiries throughout the day. We also have a geofence around the airport so that if somebody sends a Twitter message while they're on the airport campus, it gets logged, and if it has anything to do with the airport, it gets flagged. And then if there's a question embedded in there or a comment that we can respond to, we'll respond to it and create that positive messaging going back and forth.
I apologize. My phone just went off on me.
Nice.
That's because you had me turn it
At
on.
least it's
earlier.
good music. At least it's good music. Sorry for the interruption.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So economic impact, we just updated our economic impact. Back in 2010, we had an economic impact report that said the airport generated roughly $10 billion for region. It's now close to $16 billion. And I just want you to kind of absorb this slide a little bit because there's a lot of information on here. But I think it's good information to know almost 87,000 jobs, tax, almost $1 billion in tax money. We like to say we have the most valuable 3,500 acres of land between Detroit and Denver. I mean, this isn't a whole lot around until you get down to Chicago. So this is good information for us to have, and we think it's really great information for folks like you to have, to know what kind of a generator we have in our facility. All right, so striving for excellence. There's a couple things I want to mention about this, and I don't have slides on them, but to me, they're things that we are really proud of at the airport. We have a travelers advisory committee. Actually, we have a customer service action council, and then part of that customer service council is this travelers advisory committee. And we have regular travelers from a number of different businesses and personal travelers that participate on this committee and help give us reactions and information about what their experience at our airport is like. And that helps us modify some of the things we are doing so that we can create that best passenger experience. We also have a Travelers with Disabilities advisory committee, and they have done wonders for us as far as making suggestions about things that we can do to make our airport accessible for everyone. And some of the things that we have, and I think you might have just seen it recently in the news, is I think it's called ERA technology now, where a person who is blind or has difficulty seeing can put on a pair of glasses that has a camera. They call into the system and they talk to an actual person who views what their glasses are seeing and then can direct them wherever they want to go. So it isn't airport specific by any means, but it's enabled technology at our airport now. We also have, for the deaf and hard of hearing, at any one of our information booths, we have iPads available so that if they need to ask questions, they can pull up on video, interact with a live person to accomplish their sign language and get the directions and information that they need. One of the other things that we're implementing as we go forward with our overall terminal improvements program is in our restrooms, we're going to start providing adult changing tables. So this is one of those passenger amenities that has been lacking for years, but as our population continues to age, having the ability for a passenger who may be in a wheelchair and on a long flight, have an opportunity to have that type of a facility available, we think is wonderful. And some of the other airports are also working on the same type of amenity for their folks. And one of the other things that I want to mention is we call it our Surprise and Delight campaign. And I really hope that in your travels you have the opportunity to experience. So an example of our Surprise and Delight campaign is on Valentine's Day last year. We had a couple of gals roaming through the terminal, and they were handing out Dunkin' Donuts in the shape of a heart in a little Valentine box that our concessionaire Dunkin' Donuts provided. It's just a, hey, thanks for being at our airport, and a handout. We've done things like that throughout the year, and we'll continue to do things like that. And it's just kind of a really fun way to have a positive experience with our customers. So now on to some of the more specifics here. Have any of you used the bag drop? Delta's bag drop? Excellent. Did you like it?
Mm-hmm.
Good. And you're nodding too. American Airlines has one now in place as well. United is working on or negotiating with a vendor to also get one installed. Ultimately, when we get our entire ticket lobby remodeled, this is the technology that will be available. This is a test. The airlines want to try out a couple different vendors. We want to be trying out a couple different vendors. But to have this opportunity available at our airport is really great. And that absolutely is part of the lobby of the future concept.
What does it do?
Just yesterday, we opened up 2 of our unstaffed exits at Terminal 2. So unstaffed exits are those little corridor doors you walk through that you kind of don't even, at least to me, you don't even realize you're really doing it. The TSA is slowly moving towards not staffing exits anymore from security. And these technologies are the replacement for that. They're available 24 hours. You don't have to pay a staff person to sit there. The important thing about having these at Terminal 2 right now is twofold. One, if you've flown into Terminal 2 and you fly on Southwest, so you're in one of our new gates, when you exit the terminal, you can't just exit out and get to the orange ramp. You have to walk all the way down to the middle checkpoint in order to exit, and then walk all the way back to get to the Skyway to go to the orange ramp. Well, now with these doors in place as of yesterday, there is an exit at that end of the terminal. So from a passenger experience standpoint, huge amenity. This also gives us the opportunity to test this technology. There are actually two different versions sitting here side by side, and we're going to compare and contrast them because, again, as we move forward with our Terminal 1 improvements, this technology will get installed around about 2019, and we want to make sure we install the right system that works for our airport. So Terminal 2 works out to be a good test for that. Very proud of the Operational Improvements Program. So this is our Terminal 1 improvements. You probably, hopefully, saw it on the news a little bit. Brand new elevators, brand new escalators, and this is really the first piece of the overall ticket lobby and bag claim improvements. You can see the new floor terrazzo pattern starting to come through, and then wider doorways. We've modified our mezzanine. It's a cleaner, brighter look for the terminal. About 2 weeks after the Super Bowl comes and goes, we're going to wall off a section of the south side of the terminal and start making these exact improvements across from the Delta ticket counters. And then we'll slowly make our way through the rest of the terminal on the improvements. It's going to take us till 2023 to get done with the overhaul, just because we can't tell passengers not to fly for 2 years. So correct? We have to stay operational, of course. So our hotel continues to be under construction. The developer is having, they've got a great contractor. They're staying on schedule. They are planning a soft opening in June with a celebrated opening in July of this year. Our Skyway connection continues to come along. We are almost complete, actually, with our part of the construction. We're going round and round with TSA on the security checkpoint that is supposed to be in the hotel. They have committed to staffing it, so that's important. The amenities that the hotel will have is a full-blown conference center, a spa, a rooftop bar that can be rented out for events if people are interested, as well as a 300-room hotel with a couple of president suites on the top floor. So should be a really great amenity for the airport. And then, of course, our parking ramp is now under construction. It's this dirty, wide open construction area here in the middle. 5,000 spaces, roughly. We are moving our rental car facility to the new structure, so there'll be a whole new ground transportation center where people can pick up buses and shuttles and then rent their cars. So I could do an entire presentation on the parking ramp someday if you're interested. I'm just going to kind of blow by it today. Optimized profile descent. Again, this is one of those things that I think you have all hopefully have heard about. This is an approach procedure that pilots can follow, that instead of approaching the airport and then dropping down and then approaching, they kind of hit the brakes and they speed up and then this is an optimized, where they basically glide in on a slope, very general, to the airport. And what it does is it saves a ton of fuel. So the airlines love it. We like it. And we like to think that the neighborhoods like it because it does cut down a little bit on that approach noise. The fuel savings are immense for the airlines. And so we've got a calculation that we do for our airport that we are sharing with other airports. So as they begin to operate with this type of approach procedure, they can also calculate what their overall environmental savings are as well. And then on that same note, carbon accreditation. In 2017, we reached level 2 accreditation. There are 4 levels. Level 2 means that we are actively or I shouldn't say actively, we're continuing to actively pursue projects that will reduce our carbon footprint. And level 2 is intended to be a short term, so we're looking at a 5-year. We have a goal for 5 years to continue to reduce our carbon footprint. And then you get into level 3, which is basically optimizing and staying at the level that you're at. So we will consider that in a couple of years once we get through some of the work we're doing. And then I just wanted to mention our home noise mitigation program has started up again as of 2017. We got through our stipulation agreement with the court and got done with our noise mitigation program, but as part of the 2010 long-term comprehensive plan and our environmental assessment document that incorporated projects through 2020 plus, there was an amendment to that agreement that said if you are in a home that experiences a higher level of noise, average noise, between the 60 dNL and the 65 dNL, then you get that upgraded noise package. If it's at 3 years, if you're in that for 3 years. There is a limitation to the timing on the program and such, but starting in 2017, we started upgrading the insulation of homes, and we'll continue that through 2023. All right, so planning for the future, just wanted to talk really quickly about our long-term comprehensive plan. So like I mentioned, more than 50 million passengers by actually we forecasted 54 million passengers by 2035. And so the operational improvements program, the parking ramp, those projects that I sort of touched on earlier are all part of that preparing for those passengers. The improvements that we're doing are really for we call them O&D. They're the origin destination passengers, the people who live here, who work here, fly in and out of our airport every day, and not so much for the connecting passengers because they don't really see the front of our house very often. From our long-term comprehensive plan standpoint, what we are looking at doing is preparing a 2020 to 2040 plan. And the reason that we're postponing the timeline for our comprehensive plan is really due to the FAA and their converging runway operations issue that, again, I'm sure you've all heard about. They are actively trying to solve the converging runway issue and figure out what they need to manage and how they need to manage it. And when I say that, what I want you to be very clear is they are operating a safe airport today. They always do. They have measures in place to address the converging runway operations. But there are options to how they manage that. And so they're working through a process to determine what their final operating procedure is going to be. And once that's done, then we will be able to get much more specific information about how that may or may not impact our runway use. And then that information can get fed into our long-term plan. And really without some of that information, we can't create a good estimated noise contour and some of those kind of things. So it just makes a lot of sense to hold off until the FAA wraps up their study. So all we think about is Super Bowl right now. They're going crazy about Super Bowl at the airport. And there's a couple reasons why. Just a couple of pictures of if you go to the terminal anytime in the next couple weeks and you're in the main shopping mall area, you gotta check out it's like banners from end to end hanging from the ceiling. It's pretty cool to see. And then there's advertising all over the place. We have had 29 airport committees working on a continuity of operations plan for the Super Bowl, along with a whole bunch of other things. We have a lot of different things going on. So number one, we've been creating our aircraft parking plans. We're anticipating that over 1,200 general aviation jet aircraft will fly into our system for the Super Bowl. At MSP, we close a runway and use that as a parking lot and a couple of our other spaces as parking lots. We can accommodate about 250 aircraft at MSP. The rest of them have to go to our reliever airports or the outer ring airports like Mankato, St. Cloud. And so having in place where we think we're going to park those aircraft, how the FBOs are going to handle them, they're the fixed base operators that will fuel them and clean them up for folks. All major efforts. Our construction projects, we've been wrapping up and pausing between now and after the game, so we don't have contractors and a bunch of construction going on while we have all these people in our terminal. Concessions, we're working with them to provide 24-hour service. Our expectation is on game day, people are going to come to the airport after the game and just stay in the airport till Monday. And they want to fly out instead of paying for a hotel. So we're expecting we're going to have a ton of people in the terminal overnight to Monday. Monday is, of course, our big day. The TSA, on a regular day, we'll see about 35,000 passengers come through our security checkpoints. On a busy day, on a spring break busy day or NBA weekend, that bumps up to about 42,000 a day. The Monday after Super Bowl, they're expecting about 70,000 people to come through the checkpoints. A lot of people. That's why we're getting extra K-9 teams. That's why we're going to have our checkpoints open 24 hours. There's just going to be a lot of people in the terminal. Team arrivals, that's really when people believe the Super Bowl, the whole hype really starts is when the teams arrive. And they are tentatively scheduled to arrive on Sunday this week, maybe Monday, and then that sort of dominoes everything into the upcoming. Our ground transportation plans are in place. We've got our rental car facilities, beefing up staff so that they can keep up with the churn of rental cars coming back. We already talked about our security checkpoints. We've got over 1,000 volunteers ready to go during the week of Super Bowl, and in particular that Monday after. The Monday after, we want to have over 900 people in the terminal helping people figure out where they need to go. So we've got a big plan in place for that. We'll all have purple vests on, which is a real bummer that the bikes aren't in it, but they match the branding. So we have purple vests and lanyards and such. And then, of course, if it snows, everything changes, right? The snow that we got on Monday, really good thing it didn't happen 2 weeks from now. It was our worst runway configuration, and we needed runway 422, which is our proposed parking lot for the Super Bowl. So if that repeats itself, we've got a whole separate contingency plan in place. So we have a whole playbook ready to go so that we can hopefully react to any of these changing conditions. Our roadway congestion is one of our concerns, and then, like I said, the rental car return is one of those concerns. We'll have to watch and see how that goes. So that was a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair,
Member Cunningham.
now that I'm not playing any music, one of the things that I was wondering about, you were going to put this mitigation program in place, or it's starting. How much resources has the MAC committed to that mitigation program?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, you're speaking about the noise mitigation
Yes.
program. We have expended about $500 million on noise mitigation over the years, and that dates back to the early 2000s. So we're well into $500 million into our program, by far more than any other airport in the country.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was really asking about moving forward. How much are you committed to in terms of the future mitigation?
So right now, in our capital program, we're estimating we could be spending about $7 million or so a year, each year between now and 2023. So that's $30 to $40 million additional on top of what we're spending.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I'm gonna,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair. Your extended parking, is that going to, are you going to continue to have that, the one that's outside of the main terminal parking? Is that going to continue, the one that costs less for the 24-hour parking services?
Madam Chair, I'm sure, are you talking about our quick ride ramp? The one with the red shuttle?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that will continue as a passenger amenity, a parking option as we go forward. Long term, there may be other uses for that ramp, but for now, it is staying as that lower cost and very convenient parking option for people that are going to Terminal 1, and that's key, because it only goes to Terminal 1.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, this is an information item. Thank you so much for this presentation. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second? Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion is adopted. The next is the standing reports of the standing committees. The first committee is the report of the Community Development Committee. Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item is item 2018-19, and that is the amendment to the 2017 Livable Communities Annual Fund Distribution Plan and waiver of Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Grant Award Limits, and finally Supplemental Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development Grant Awards. Madam Chair, this action is to amend the fund distribution plan and award $746,319 in Livable Communities Demonstration Account TOD grant funds to support 3 projects in 2 cities. There's a fund balance in the LCDA account from grant relinquishments and interest earnings that's sufficient to fund all of the eligible 2017 TOD grant projects. 3 projects were not recommended for awards with the original TOD funding recommendation in October of last year due to funding limitations. Upon completion, these 3 projects are expected to result in over 400 new housing units, including 224 affordable units along the Blue Line, C Line, and the Green Line extension, 68 permanent jobs, and over $98 million of leveraged private investment. Therefore, Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, I move that the full council amend the fund distribution plan to increase the Livable Communities Demonstration Account TOD available funding by $4,554,444, waive the $2 million per city limit on LCDA TOD grant awards, award these 3 LCDA TOD grants as listed in the committee's report, totaling $4,746,319 to the cities of Minneapolis and Minnetonka, and finally authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement on the council's behalf.
Thank you, Member Commerce. Hearing the recommendation from the committee, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Member Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I opposed this item at the Community Development Committee, and I plan to continue to oppose it today. We have a rather unusual situation in here. Normally, when there's a very large amount of leftover money sitting in the fund balance, we have a discussion with our communities and put it out in a future funding round so that everyone can have an opportunity at that. We didn't do that this time, and we're also giving one city more than double the limit that is allowed for any one city under this program. I think originally we wanted cities to sort of pick their best and brightest projects within the funding limit for the program, not just throw a bunch of projects out there and see what happens. And we're sort of rewarding the non-prioritization from one city and going more than double the limit for one city's projects in this award. So I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Member Blunt.
Madam Chair, I'm going to vote in support of this because these are 3 very strong projects that create affordable housing at a time where there's an urgent need. Right now, people are freezing to death in the Minnesota winter because they don't have a roof over their heads. I don't think that the reserve fund should be treated as a bank account, but rather something that can build projects that are going to house people who urgently need a home.
Thank you, Member Munt. Any other comments on this? Member Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern is the when, not the what, not the how, et cetera. And I was not able to attend the Community Development Committee meeting because of discussion we had on another matter. But I share Councilmember Wolf's concerns this time as far as what I was lobbying for, advocating for, was for next year. And let's take another look at the configuration or how the calculations are determined for which projects are going to receive funding more in the suburbs as much as possible. So, yes, I understand, and it's the first time I think I've voted against anything for funding affordable housing since I've been here. But it's a when issue. I would still support affordable housing or these projects if they were happening in Minnetonka, for example, all of them, or in Egan, or in Plymouth. I'm more concerned about the concentration of them, of these projects in the two core cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Discussion? Member Commerce.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to speak, just to say that we did have a good discussion at the committee over a series of meetings, and I want to acknowledge the points that Councilmembers Wolf and Chavez have raised. We are going to be engaging between now and March in a, I think, thoughtful discussion that will include the concerns they've raised as we lead up to the adoption of the 2018 fund distribution plan. I think these are legitimate questions that are well suited to that forum.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
The motion is adopted. Councilmember Commerce, the next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee's second item is item 2018-20, and that is to amend the 2017 Livable Communities Fund Distribution Plan and award an additional $498,288 in LCDA grant funds to support 2 development projects in the cities of Roseville and St. Paul. There is a fund balance in the LCDA account from grant relinquishments and interest earnings. That is sufficient to fully fund the Edison project in Roseville, which was previously recommended to receive a partial award, and also to fund the Pioneer Press project in St. Paul, which was not recommended for an award earlier this month due to funding limitations. Upon completion, funding these projects will provide 143 new affordable housing units, 4 permanent and 200 temporary jobs, and over $48 million of leveraged private investments. Therefore, Madam Chair, on the committee's behalf, I move that the council amend the fund distribution plan to increase LCDA available funding by $498,288, award an additional $248,288 for the Edison project in Roseville, and an amount of $250,000 for the Pioneer Press project in St. Paul, and finally authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement on the council's behalf.
Thank you, Member Commerce. Hearing the recommendation from the committee, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
The motion is adopted. The next report of the Environment Committee, Councilmember Rummel.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Business item 2017-26 is a same week item to authorize a public hearing for wastewater reuse-related amendments to the Water Resources Policy Plan. This item was presented as an information item at the Committee of the Whole on January 17, 2018. The Water Reuse Policy Task Force the Wastewater Reuse Policy Task Force purpose was to review the Council's existing wastewater reuse policy and also to recommend clarifications needed in order to respond to requests for wastewater reuse. The task force has completed its work and reached a consensus on a number of policy clarifications. It did not reach consensus on the issue of regional cost share for wastewater reuse projects with a regional benefit. At this time, we would like to schedule a public hearing to collect feedback from the public on the proposed amendments outlined on the second page of the business item. I therefore move that the Metropolitan Council authorize a public hearing to gather public input on alternative wastewater reuse-related amendments to the Water Resource Policy Plan.
Thank you, Member Rummel. Hearing the recommendation from the committee, is there any discussion on this item? I think that trying to extend the public comment period makes a lot of sense, and I think I really support that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I forgot to ask for a second. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next report is the Management Committee. Councilmember Chavez. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is business item 2018, let's see what we got here, -8. The labor agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1005. The ATU contract expired July 31, 2017. The ATU represents 2,516 employees, including bus operators, train operators, technicians, and maintenance and clerical staff. Following recommendation from the ATU Executive Board, the ATU membership ratified the agreement on December 19, 2017. Highlights of the agreement include a 3-year contract, a 2.5% general increase each year of the agreement, a one-time lump sum payment of $400, increased employee responsibility for health insurance premiums. The cost of the labor agreement was reviewed by Finance and was negotiated within the economic parameters established by the Council. The item was reviewed and approved by the Management Committee on January 10. Madam Chair, we move approval of this matter to authorize the Regional Administrator to enter into a labor agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union effective August 1, 2017 through July 31, 2020.
Thank you, Member Chavez. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we'll hear from Councilmember Rodriguez on the Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2018-13 deals with the Metropolitan Airports Commission Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP, that they prepare annually for projects at MSP International Airport and their 6 reliever airports. Under state statutes, the Council must determine adequacy of public participation in the CIP process, approve CIP projects meeting certain dollar thresholds, $5 million at MSP and $2 million at all reliever airports, and significant effects criteria, which is detailed in your business item. Finally, to review and comment on all projects for consistency with the Transportation Policy Plan. I therefore move, Madam Chair, that the Metropolitan Council find that the Metropolitan Airports Commission had an adequate public participation process for the development and review of the 2018-2024 CIP, including preparation of an assessment of environmental effects for 2018 projects with potential environmental effects, that there are no projects that need to be approved in the CIP since no projects meet both the funding level and significant effects criteria, that the 2018 CIP projects are in conformance with the region's aviation system plan and consistent with council policy.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next 3 items are the items that I spoke about earlier that are same week items due to the cancellation of the Transportation Committee earlier this week. So if there are members of the public who wish to address the council after each item, you'll have an opportunity to do so. Member Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And because we have not had a presentation on this, Steve Peterson is here to present. And then I'll make the motion after following the presentation.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I think we'll get the PowerPoint here. Here it comes. Perfect. So this presentation is on the Corridors of Commerce program, and this is a $400 million program that was announced by approved by the legislature last session. There's again $400 million available. The application period is open now, lasts until February 5th. We've received about MnDOT received about 175 comments from the public on the various measures and the way they're going to administer the program. And in the end, decided on a soft 50-50 split between the 8-county metro area and greater Minnesota. So there's a lot of back and forth on various measures, some of the technical details, and we went over that with the Transportation Committee in the last several meetings. So again, the 50-50 split between the Metro and Greater Minnesota, and wanted to just give you an update on some of the other recent federal funding for competitive solicitations we've had. There was a recent federal freight funding award where the metro area did receive 80% of that funding when projects were compared with Greater Minnesota. The TED awards, a lot of people heard about those, the Transportation Economic Development. The metro area again received a high percentage of those when compared metro projects compared to Greater Minnesota. We received 90% of that funding in the recently announced awards there. But from the big picture, and we discussed this as part of the TPP, the metro area is likely to see a declining share of the total statewide capital budget that MnDOT does receive as we put more money towards pavements and bridges and keeping those intact. And most of those pavement miles and bridges are in Greater Minnesota, not here. So over time, that means more money leaving the metro area to go that would have gone towards things like congestion mitigation, bike ped projects, and other important projects in the metro area. So with that context, a lot of the local agencies have been taxing themselves and submitting projects and funding projects on MnDOT's statewide system. We've given a chart here of a few of the projects that started in the regional solicitation receiving about $7 million, 4 to 5 years in advance of construction. And then those local agencies have really had to scramble to put together a number of funding sources, whether it be the TED on the federal level, Tigers, one that people have heard about, these federal freight funds, or now Corridors of Commerce, which some of the projects that were regional solicitation projects are now going to be pursuing the Corridors of Commerce, $200 million that's available to the metro area. So the final scoring, there's 700 points that will be available for Corridors of Commerce based on the criteria established by the legislature. MnDOT did come up with the measures and how they were going to measure return on investment, economic competitiveness, freight efficiency, safety, regional connections, policy objectives, and community consensus. We wanted to highlight that last one, community consensus, because various letters of support will be going back and forth. You do get 45 points out of the 700 if you do have the MPO letter of support. 45 points additionally if all the cities and counties that are impacted or touched by the project have an approved resolution that's submitted to MnDOT, and then 10 points if the local Chamber of Commerce does support your project. So with that, one other thing to note, MnDOT will not be applying for these funds. And so local agencies, whether it be the cities, counties, anyone from the general public, and in this case, the MPO from the staff level felt that it was important that we submit some of the more regional projects for consideration that have come out of our regional planning studies. We've done 2 major studies that are noted here. One of those was a MnPass. We're on our 3rd iteration there. So what MnPass corridors across the region are the highest benefit to the region. So we have 5 projects there that coming out of this study that we'd like to submit, and we're asking for your approval on those 5 projects. Quickly to go through those, 494 MnPass, that would be from Highway 212 to the airport, a $200 million project, so that would take all the money if that did win. So we did, the second project is a shortened version of that. That would be roughly from France Avenue over to Cedar Avenue. Another high-ranking MnPass corridor for the region out of our studies was Highway 252, Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, heading down the river to I-94. The 4th on the list is 35W MnPass. This would be from Roseville to downtown Minneapolis. And then lastly, some improvements to I-94 280 interchange, and that would be part of a larger, over time, an I-94 MnPass project between downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul. So those are the 5 MnPass projects that staff is recommending for approval to submit to the Corridors of Commerce program. Then we did have 5 other projects that came out of a study called Congestion Management and Safety Plan, CMSP. We're on our 4th iteration of that study, and these are lower cost, high benefit projects. The projects we've selected here are focused just on the freeway system. So part of the reason why is because their local cost participation applies. So if we did submit a project where a local leg was either owned by the city or county, they'd be required to pay part of this total project cost. And so we've encouraged our local partners to submit those projects. We would support them, but we didn't want to leave a bill with a local partner on a project that the council did submit. So 5 projects here. One of them, Highway 62. This is on the north side of the airport. Two different iterations of that project. One is both directions. One is eastbound between 35W and Cedar Avenue. 4 I-94 auxiliary lanes in Maple Grove from the Fish Lake Interchange north up to Maple Grove Hospital, County Road 30. And then 2 projects here just to the north of us in St. Paul and I-94, a series of auxiliary lanes, short segments to relieve some congestion there. Both of those are about $3 to $6 million projects, so lower cost, high benefit projects. Again, we're asking for approval of to submit these projects. Another topic is the letters of support, and whether the council will submit letters of support. We've been asked by about 25 projects, and that number climbs every day for various projects. We're taking a look at those and communicating with Councilmember Rodriguez on those projects. A lot of those are coming out of our regional prioritization efforts, whether it be the principal arterial intersection convergence study for new interchanges or other study efforts that we've recently completed. So we'll be looking at whether they're consistent with the TPP or not, and then bringing that to the Transportation Committee for further discussion. And again, those are due within 60 days of the February 5th deadline, so we do have some time on that, so we don't have to ask for any approvals of that today. One last thing to note, the last bullet point on this page, just outside the 7-county metro, an area we call 7W, this is the urbanized part of Wright and Sherburne counties. The 5 communities there, they are part of the MPO region, so they will have to ask for letters of support also. And Metro versus Greater Minnesota, it's another kind of artificial boundary. When they do the 50-50 split, it does include the 8th county being Chisago County. So any projects in Chisago County, and we know of one, which is a expansion project on Highway 8, will be, if it is successful, be in the Metro pool of the 200 million. So we'll maybe go back to the recommended submittals and take any questions, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions on this item? Member Commerce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve, I think I know the answer to this question, but I want to ask it anyway. Is there an estimate for the maintenance or the longer-term capital replacement implications of the Corridor of Commerce program in terms of the investments we make now? What's the long-term sort of legacy costs of those decisions?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So certainly when you're adding new pavement, you're adding also a long-term bill to that, because you're going to have to maintain that pavement. In many cases here, they are shorter projects. I would call, in many cases, the last 5 on the list are a mile or less, so very short projects. So the cost there would be minimal, I would say. But certainly some of the longer projects that will be submitted across the state will have long-term payments needs that need to be addressed. And you do get additional points if there is a pavement need associated with your project. So MnDOT is encouraging projects where they do know that you need to replace the pavement or the bridge in the short term, that you're coupling those projects together.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, follow up. So the legislature, though, do not appropriate any kind of resource for either the Metro or other parts of the state to manage those long-term responsibilities.
Madam Chair and members, that is correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Do you want to talk at all about the MNCHIP program and the kind of declining revenues to the metro area versus Greater Minnesota for preservation? Because that's part of the challenge, I think, is really when you look at kind of the overall Minnesota statewide highway improvement program from a metro perspective, we're seeing declining revenues as the need for pavement and bridge preservation, system preservation in Greater Minnesota increases. The amount of money that's coming into the metro is decreasing kind of as a percentage share. And so when we're forecasting out, well, I should let you do this.
Doing great.
Go ahead.
So thank you, Madam Chair. So on the it's a very small font, but on the bottom of this page shows the declining revenue to the metro area. So the next 10 years, we're actually going to be pretty close to what we've traditionally received at 42.6%, but more heading out towards that 2040 timeframe. As indicated in MnDOT's State Highway Investment Plan, we're going to be dipping down below the 30%, but the pavements and bridges in the metro area with that money will be They will be kept in good shape to meet performance targets. Where performance targets will dip below what MnDOT expects is in Greater Minnesota, where even though the money will be shifted there, they're still going to have declining pavements and bridges. But we'll be doing pretty well here with the money that is available for pavements.
Member Munt.
Madam Chair, three concerns about this. First, I support the staff recommendations. However, the 50-50 split doesn't give the metropolitan area its fair share to meet our needs. Secondly, I'm concerned that when we continue to do corridors of commerce every session, we're simply putting a Band-Aid on a problem that really needs a long-term, dedicated, stable source of funding for both our roads and bridges. And thirdly, I think there are projects that are urgently needed that are not on this list. So in my district, Highway 101 along the Bluff segment, it is downright dangerous. It is a steep, curvy road where when we have snow incidents like we had this week, school buses are in the ditch along with all the kids on board. That's a priority for both the city of Chanhassen and for Carver County. And it's something where if safety is top of the criteria list, it's urgently needed. It's not something that we've done a study on, but my district feels strongly that that project needs to be among the corridor of commerce projects.
Go ahead.
So, Madam Chair and members, just to respond to that specific project, that is one of the 25 that we have received from the city, that being from the city of Chanhassen, the 101 project. And at least from staff's perspective, that would be one that we'd recommend supporting.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too am disappointed at the that it remained a 50-50 split. I think Councilmember Munt put it very well in that there is just not enough funding out there. And Councilmember Commer's point about a plan for long-term maintenance is, or long-term preservation is well taken. I think that even though it's 50-50 for this particular corridors of commerce, I hope that we continue to advocate because that share is going to decline pretty rapidly. So long term, I would like to see us return at least to the 42.6%.
Any other questions? Member Commerce.
Madam Chair, I do want to make a couple of comments, and I first want to thank Councilmember Rodriguez and MTS staff because I've been raising questions about some of the issues around this program for a little while, and they've been very patient with my questions. I guess the question the concern I really want to raise is there are two things. One is that I think there are some governance questions that are raised by this program because we are, as a council, accountable for finding investments in the region consistent with the Regional Development Guide, Thrive, the TPP, the other documents that comprise that guide. I think it puts us in a very difficult position when our partners at the legislature or at our other state agencies put us in a position where that's a very difficult finding to make in terms of timing, in terms of content, et cetera. So that's the first thing. The second is that, as Steve has laid out, I think there are really some significant questions about the fiscal viability of expansion. And I think that for that reason, even dating back to the 1996 Transportation Policy Plan, the Council has consistently found that we cannot really effectively build our way out of congestion. I think with diminishing revenues that are projected, it really calls the question about what are the resources we're anticipating will appear in order to maintain new capacity we're thinking about adding. And then the next step is, what will the new capacity prompt? Will it solve the question of congestion, or will it simply induce demand that rapidly eliminates the short-lived benefit of those improvements? It seems to me that since '96 we've had pretty consistent pulling out of this acknowledgement that we can't build our way out of this problem, and it seems to me too that a logical hierarchy for our decision-making could be first, maintenance and repair of our existing system, second, maximizing efficiency, with some of the steps, for example, in the MinPass projects that are listed here. Third, where are those low-cost, high-benefit projects that we can do for safety, bottlenecks, et cetera. And then finally, as a last resort, when we really can establish that there is available funding over the long term to support it, then consider general purpose lands. I don't feel like that final condition is really in place. It feels like week to week, year to year, that condition is getting weaker and weaker. The question about whether those funds are going to be available is more tenuous now than it's been for a very long time. So I just want to express those concerns. I can support these recommended submittals. My concern on some level is about projects that will be submitted to us by our local partners for letters of support. I think it's really critical that as a council, we're very deliberate about how and when we make findings of consistency between those proposed letters of support and the council's responsibility to find those consistent with the regional development guide. So thank you for the chance to share those thoughts.
Thank you. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The legislature created this Quarters of Commerce, and it is specifically designed to improve mobility and to address congestion and to better the flow of commerce throughout the state. And I think that our two tools as a council are to submit these projects, which we're asking the council to do tonight, and then also this letters of support process. And I think that staff are going to do their due diligence about vetting those and making sure that they are consistent with our Thrive principles and also the transportation policy plan. And if any council members have issues with individual projects, they can certainly follow up with staff, and we can have future meetings about it.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I sit on a 252 task force, and that's the highway that connects I-94 and 610. And it's a terribly congested corridor, and it's chaired by Commissioner Olpat. And we have mayors and council members who serve on this. And we had our district engineer, Scott McBride, at our last meeting, and he talked about the Corridors of Commerce process. And this is a fairly new thing. The legislature is reluctant to pass a gas tax, so then they created this pot of money that people have to fight over. And my question to Mr. McBride was, the past selection of projects was a wee bit mystifying to me. All of a sudden, we had all these projects, and I wasn't too sure who made the final decision. And I said, they went through a different process this time, Mr. McBride said, and it was kind of hands-off on MnDOT. And if you agree, and if you want to add to that, that would be great. And I got some assurances that it's a little different internally on how these projects evolved. But I still don't like the Corridors of Commerce project because it's just it's just not the way it should be done. They should just raise the gas tax, bite the bullets, and start funding highways like they're supposed to, instead of creating these little pots of money and then people have to fight over them. And I don't like this process at all. But I'm a good member of that 252 corridor, and we're on the list. And I'm prepared to support this. But maybe you could add to this Corridors of Commerce process this time, that solicitation process. Would you do that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So they have changed the process where the legislature was very deliberate in coming up with the criteria that would be used by MnDOT to select the projects. MnDOT also in response has said they are not going to submit any projects because they're going to be scoring them. So a few things took place to create more transparency in the process. And at the same time, the legislature said a couple years down the road, MnDOT, all of your projects are going to have a scored and a ranking so that the public can see what's being funded and what's not being funded and why. So there's a few things that happened last session that are increasing transparency for the general public, and I think MnDOT has also taken some steps to do what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Member Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question. So I thought and correct me if this has changed as MnDOT has come back, but they're not releasing the scores before, like, they're not going to put out how these projects are scored. So we can see the difference between how projects in the metropolitan, the 8-county metro and greater Minnesota really would rank against each other. Is that correct?
Madam Chair and members, I'm going to look to Nick on this one, but I think in the end, you're going to have a scored list that compares metro and greater Minnesota projects, but maybe not.
Madam Chair, members, I think the TED program, the recent one, they said they're not going to release those scores. But in this case, they're going to be very transparent, rank all the scores on each criteria and show them. And one of the points we argued for is that projects should be scored equally statewide, or so that project in St. Cloud has the same scoring system generally as Bloomington, and that list should be there. I mean, so we expect that there'll be projects in the metro that are skipped over, maybe split 50-50 first. But on this program, they are going to release the scores.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. I'm glad to hear that because I know it was sort of an evolving discussion. And what concerns me with the corridors of commerce and the 50-50 split is we've got these projects that are central to the urban core, which I think would score very well for the metropolitan area, but some of these areas in the area outside of the urban area, that kind of extends to the actual outer region, which would compare very well to greater Minnesota. And I think it's important to show that contrast because some of these projects truly are mobility issues and become very severe congestion problems, and they become true connector roads in some of the urban or exurban and suburban areas that are really critical to moving around. And so I'm really interested to see how they score kind of compared both to the metropolitan, the more urban center, and to greater Minnesota. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments or thoughts on this? Member Rodriguez, do you want to present the item?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for
Madam
your
Chair.
presentation.
2018-27, same week, staff proposes that the Council submit the 10 projects in Table 1 to the Quarters of Commerce program. The Metropolitan Council can represent regional interests and TPP goals by submitting project proposals that have been prioritized in recent regional highway planning studies. I therefore move, Madam Chair, that the Metropolitan Council approve the submittal of the attached 10 projects for consideration in MnDOT's Quarters of Commerce solicitation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Further discussion? I think I would just add that I would like to thank our partners at MnDOT for their willingness to hear our concerns about the way the kind of the split between greater Minnesota and the metro region would go. I really do feel like our comments were heard through the process. I think they didn't end up they weren't ultimately able to change the process, but I do think that they really did take our concerns seriously, and I really do appreciate that. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted.
Next up is 2018-28. It's a same week item. We don't have a presentation on this, but Joe Barbeau is here if you have any questions. It's an amendment to the Transportation Improvement Plan that is needed because Metro Transit was awarded a federal low-no emissions FTA grant for the purchase of 8 electric 60-foot buses and related charging equipment for use on the C-Line bus rapid transit corridor. I therefore move, Madam Chair, that the Metropolitan Council concur with the Transportation Advisory Board action to amend the 2018-2021 Transportation Improvement Program to add a project electrifying buses and related charging equipment for Metro Transit's C-Line project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion from the public? Would any members of the public like to address this item? Seeing none, council members, do you have any discussion on this item?
Cool.
Seeing none, Member Mutt.
Madam Chair, it's nice to see us purchasing buses from New Flyer in St. Cloud. They are union-produced buses, and they are top of the line.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The item is adopted. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2018-29, same week. We also don't have a presentation on this, but Mike Joyce is here if you have any questions. And it deals with an electric bus procurement contract for the New Flyer Incorporated that allows the purchase of the 8 electric buses and 6 charges. This will be a sole source procurement due to prior commitment related to the 2017 low-no emissions FTA discretionary grant award. I therefore move, Madam Chair, that the Metropolitan Council authorize the purchase of 8 electric 60-foot buses and 6 chargers for use in the Sea Line Bus Rapid Transit corridor for an amount not to exceed $12,601,519.68, with expected delivery in 2018-2019. This project will provide expanded and improved transit service in the Penn Avenue corridor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Would any members of the public like to address this item? Any council members have any comments? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item on the agenda is other business. The appointments to the Transportation Advisory Board. The action before us today is to approve several recommended members to the advisory board, and I need to grab their names. I lost the sheet though. Sorry. Yep, I got that. Okay, sorry. So we have Doug Anderson for District A, Tim Hubish for District A, the alternate, Brad Tapke for District B, Suzanne Sandal, District C, Susan Sanger, District C alternate. This is really hard saying all of these names. Ahmed Staples, District D, Erica Donnie, District D alternate, Matt Hollinshead, Transit Representative, Nick Fox, the Transit Representative alternate, Emily Foster, the Transit Representative, Dave Van Hattem is another Transit Representative alternate, Ethan Foley, the non-motorized representative, Matt Privatsky, thank you, non-motorized representative alternate. So those are the recommended folks for TAB. Can I have a second? Can I have a motion and a second to approve the TAB appointments?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Is there any discussion on this item? Sorry, Member Munt.
Madam Chair, I praise the selection committee. I don't think we could have picked a better slate of people.
That's fantastic. So I am also very excited to make these recommendations for the appointments and the alternates to districts A through D and the modal representatives to the Transportation Advisory Board. I just want to make sure folks know that the council received over 30 applications for the vacancies and interviewed candidates over 3 evenings in December. All of the candidates that were interviewed showed a passion for the work and the mission of the TAB, and I'm really excited to have some of their continued interest for serving, as well as some of the really strong first-time candidates. I also want to make sure that we thank the council members who served on the selection panels, Councilmember Rodriguez, Elkins, Dorfman, and Latovsky. That took a lot of time and energy, and really appreciate that. Are there any other comments on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. So the next item on our agenda is to hear an update on the Super Bowl. So we'll hear from our colleagues at Metro Transit. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. I'm AJ Olson, Deputy Chief of Transit Police. We met before. It wasn't very many weeks ago. I think we were here in this room trying to update you on plans that weren't actually solidified yet, and trying to take a guess at which direction we're going on several issues. I think that after the events of Monday evening with our weather, I think the NFL was going, maybe we should have gone back to Houston. But we said, it's just snow, don't worry about it, we'll be fine tomorrow. And we were. By Tuesday afternoon, I think there was not really a congestion problem, and the Twin Cities was moving like we always do, as well as the air. So we're still going to have this football game, and now it's just a few days away. To give you a quick update on what transit police are doing in these final days, I first want to say something about law enforcement in the Minnesota community of law enforcement. We are actually known for collaboration, whether it's a planned event like the Republican National Convention that was hosted right here in this city in 2008, or the Major League All-Star Game at Target Field, Minneapolis in 2014, or even the tragic events that you can't plan for, like the 35W bridge collapse or the North Minneapolis tornado in 2011. If you talk to some of our federal partners, the guys at the FBI, the Secret Service, they get moved around to different cities as part of their career, and they will all tell you that they have never seen a law enforcement community like we enjoy here in Minnesota, who are anxious to come together and make it work for the people that we serve. We seem to have the ability, when it really matters most, to take all of our huge egos, and I'll tell you, anybody that wears stars on his collar's got ego to deal with, tuck them in a drawer and get the job done, not really worry too much about who gets the credit or who gets the blame when it doesn't go so well. So with that in mind, what we've been doing, especially these last few weeks, the NFL showed up here in town again to stay here on January 2nd with a small contingent, basically the contingent that we've been working with all along. By the 15th, the day after the divisional round, I think it was, of the playoffs, the rest of them came to town. And to give you a quick example, the Hyatt in downtown Minneapolis, I think, has around 470 rooms or something like that. And the NFL currently is occupying more than 400 of them. And that doesn't count some of their contractors and stuff. So since they've been in town, especially since the 15th, the meeting schedule has just gotten frenetic. It isn't just the people we've been dealing with all along, the lead people, the security people, it's their staff now. And now staff's wanting time with us and with everybody to try to nail down those last few details, or actually it's more to get them comfortable with the details. So there's the NFL security, NFL event staff that are in town, and then their major contractors. SP Plus Game Day is a transportation contractor that we've all been working with all along. But we've been working with their leadership, and now their staff's in town, and their staff wants to be briefed on what exactly is going on. Populous, Party Planners West, all big contractors that work for the NFL, same situation with them. The reason for all these meetings, and there's meetings, there's training, there's drills, and there's exercises. The real reason is to actually do the final review of the event action plans. And I think I mentioned when I was here before that just our event action plan is approaching about 300 pages. Now, every incident command, and there's dozens of incident commands throughout the Twin Cities, has an event action plan that covers the whole 11 or 12 days, just like ours do. And they go into one unified plan, hosted that's maintained by Minneapolis. What we have to do in these final days is make sure that there's no conflicts between those plans. And it's not really reasonable to expect anybody, a staff member, the chief, even my chief doesn't have enough time to sit page through thousands of pages to make sure that there's no conflicts or there's no timing issues. And so the way we deal with that is we've been participating in a host of what we call tabletop drills. In other words, there'll be an exercise where we all sit around in a room much like this one with all of the first responder agencies, and then the NFL staff observing and asking questions, so that we can deal with those those possible conflicts. We have to test those key assessments. In other words, my plan might assume that Minneapolis police would do a particular thing in a particular situation. Well, the drill is designed for me to have the confidence that they will actually do what I thought they were going to do, and in a timely fashion. So testing those key assumptions and then resolving the conflicts. And the conflicts aren't about, well, we thought that was your job. Well, sometimes they are, but it's not so much that, it's about timing. We thought that the canines would be here to screen these buses at this particular time. Oh no, we're committed to the convention center at that time. So we have to work those kind of things out. So those are the kind of things we can do, we've been doing. And I was just telling the chief this afternoon, I said, it seems like today and tomorrow it's kind of settled down. I think our partners at the NFL are comfortable with what we got planned. I know that the city of Minneapolis, the police department, is comfortable with the partners that are working together with them. And I will tell you that our staff is ready and excited to get this going. And we're really, even though the game's a few more days away, we're only 2 days away from going operational. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Brian Funk, to talk about transportation.
All right, thank you, AJ. Again, my name is Brian Funk. I serve as Deputy Chief Operating Officer for the bus system with Metro Transit. And so what I'm going to do is provide a couple of slides that are just sort of reviews. We came before you, as was mentioned, and the good news is that our plans have matured and really are pretty much the same as what we reviewed last time. If you've been in downtown Minneapolis, you've no doubt taken note of some of what's on this map. We already are experiencing a number of road closures that started earlier this month, most notably Nicolette Mall. Our 6 primary bus routes on Nicolette Mall returned to a detour on Hennepin to make room for the staging and equipment set up along the mall. I took a visit this afternoon, and it's hard to recognize and figure out exactly where you are. It's a transformed landscape. We have about 38 routes that are impacted by different detours, closures, reroutes, and all in all, so far, things are going well. We're able to navigate on our planned detour routes, and as I mentioned before, we have detours for our detours, and we have detours for those detours as well. So all of those are executed in the hopper so that we're able to communicate with our customers. We've been doing it in advance, and we'll continue to do so as things change in real time. You'll notice that the primary areas, again, Nicolette Mall, the Convention Center, and the stadium are the 3 primary venues in downtown. The road closures primarily affect areas around those venues. A quick review of some of our additional bus service. Again, as was previously mentioned, we really tried to focus on a number of principles, including developing service that would benefit and serve our regular customers, our everyday riders, as well as local visitors who may want to partake in the event, as well as the visitors who come in primarily over the second weekend. And so with that in mind, we developed service that we think hits on all of those. Due to the detours, we've developed additional buses for service protection so that we can protect against late buses, overloads, and whatnot. We have regular route service that will benefit local customers running starting this weekend with routes including the Route 94, 724, and 535. Over the weekend, we'll start our express service, and I'll get to a slide showing details on that, but we have 5 park and rides where we're going to operate a service very similar to our very successful state fair service from our park and ride locations into the downtown core. On game day, of course, I'm going to turn that over to Mark Benedict in a moment, but we'll be running free bus bridges for our regular customers so they know what to expect on game day. And we have 1 game day shuttle between the convention center and the stadium that's also been planned and in the works. We've been in a lot of the meetings with Deputy Chief Olson and law enforcement partners to be able to provide the requisite support. We regularly provide mutual aid and service for our law enforcement partners so that they're able to work with the community effectively, and we're going to continue to do that throughout this operational period to make sure we do so responsibly. And as the airport presentation alluded to before, both on bus and rail, we're planning for Monday. So Sunday night, we'll all breathe a sigh of relief. Everybody will go home, and one side will be really happy, one side maybe not quite as much, but we know everybody will have a good time. But our work isn't done, and so we need to make sure that the visitors who are counting on us to get them to the airport have that service. And so we developed plans both on the bus and rail network to do so. On the rail side, we have standby buses planned so that if there's overloads, if there are interruptions, we have buses that can immediately respond and take care of our regular customers, particularly in the afternoon rush hour on weekdays. We also have 10-minute light rail headways that started last weekend until 11:30 p.m. Knowing that there's so many more people coming into the region, we want to be able to provide that high-frequency service so that we don't have the same number of overloads that we might otherwise expect. There's train service providing for the 4 a.m. bar closings on February 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, knowing that there might be additional folks partaking in those events downtown. We wanted to make sure that they had a safe ride to be able to get back to their hotels and points outside of downtown. Starting Friday night, as we previously mentioned, at US Bank Stadium Station, we'll be traveling through there the entire time. However, we won't be serving that station, so we've been working hard on communicating that to ensure that all transfers are completed successfully at Government Station. And finally, before I turn it over to Mark, the North Star Extra service. Surveyed our North Star customers, found out what are the key days that would benefit them to have additional trips in the midday and in the evening. And so that service will be operating Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the game weekend. And here's a quick overview of that Park and Ride weekend service starting this Saturday. We're gearing that up to be able to serve the downtown events. So we'll be starting at 9:30 in the morning until 10 p.m. to hit those event hours. We identified 5 of our key locations where we know we have a good draw from our state fair service, and we should be able to attract and keep some folks off the road, transporting directly into the Leamington ramp, which is proximate to the convention center in downtown Minneapolis. It's a one place that everybody will be able to know that they can go and be able to make that trip back and forth successfully on Metro Transit buses. So with that, I'll turn it to Mark.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Benedict. I'm the Director of Light Rail Operations and Transportation. Thank you for having us here this evening. I have kind of a light lift tonight. I think we've gone over this rail transportation plan several times. But what I can say that it is absolutely the final transportation plan. The last time we briefed, though we briefed it as our plan, it wasn't necessarily final. There were some challenges to the plan from the NFL and other challenges, primarily the NFL. But we've worked our ways through that with due to the quality of our plan and the detail that we've put into our plan. Also to the fact of the matter is that more than any Super Bowl in NFL history, this one particularly is dependent on mass transit. And then finally, with the leadership of the chair and the regional administrator and our general manager, and our ability to rely on them standing behind us, we were really able to get to that negotiation table with the NFL. And despite their reputation of being tough cookies, we got everything we wanted. So, and that's a benefit to us as an organization, and more so a benefit to our ridership, to be sure. So, on game day, our railroad will be divided into 4 segments. 2 segments will operate regular service, and the other 2 segments will be the security corridors. There'll be a regular service segment north of Government Center on game day that will operate between Government Center and Target Field. There will be a regular service segment from Union Depot to Stadium Village. And then from Stadium Village and Mall of America into US Bank will be the 2 secure corridor segments. Of course, the protocols for those 2 segments from the points of origin, Stadium Village and Mall of America, all passengers that will use that rail service will be screened at those locations off of the stadium footprint, boarded onto trains that are previously screened by our police department, and those trains will operate in the corridors that were both screened by our police department, but also will be overwatched by the police department. These trains will go nonstop in that they will stop at stations, and because they have to wait for the signaling system to give them proper clearance so we can get through intersections and that. Will not be opening their doors. These stations will be manned by police members of our police department, Metropolitan Police Department, as well as volunteers in the form of ambassadors at each one of those stops to police department to secure the station, ambassadors in order to help our normal or regular rail customers make sure they get to the proper location that they need to be in order to take advantage of the replacement bus service. All riders on these trains, as I think you know, must present 2 credentials to get on the train. One will be the actual ticket to the game, and second will be our mobile pass that you can see there on the slide. That mobile pass is good only for game day, only for this ride. At the cost of $30 a ticket, you must have that in order to get on board. I'd like to remind everybody again that this particular arrangement really was conducted with security in mind, to be sure, but really to preserve the experience in reliable transportation for our regular ridership. Had we not done this, two things. We would not have the ability to meter people getting onto the system. In this fashion, we're selling tickets in blocks of time so that we can meter that movement. And we would likely result in crush loads of people that we couldn't get to the station in time, and it would completely saturate our system, so our regular ridership really would not have any options available to them. That's just a reminder as to why we've gone here. You can see on the slide, we will have free replacement bus service, bus rides for this. They'll be at very tight headways, continuous service all along the alignment. They will be at shelters that we're putting together for that one single day only. Where the shelters are put into, less than stable ground, we'll have platforms put in. But in most cases, these shelters or these pickups for the bus will be co-located with our current light rail stations. So there'll be heated areas in some of the locations where we can bring it, and a lot of them they'll have the security lighting from the station area already there. They'll have PD in the general area, and we will have ambassadors there to assist anyone who needs directions or needs assistance getting in and out of the buses. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the post-game staging. I think we briefed this before. Our post-game approach is to saturate the downtown with every train available. If they're not providing regular service on Green Line or that north end service, we're going to pack them into the downtown area. We hired a contractor that came in to give us a mathematical assessment as to how many trains we can get into there without overloading the system. They calculated 20 trains, 23 car sets, 60 individual train cars. And I'm very happy to say that we've had an opportunity to actually test that theory. We were able to get 21 trains in, 63 individual cars into the downtown area over a period of time that is, according to plan, will allow us to get those trains in on game day, so that post-game, as those doors open and the fans pour out, we'll pound that station every couple of minutes with a train going eastbound, southbound. All traffic out of there will be going eastbound, southbound. There'll be no northbound traffic because if you think about it, pregame, all the traffic that would be going north came in through Government Center. They couldn't go any further. Either they walked in there or they came in on our train and walked in through there. So all that northbound traffic will be encouraged to go back to Government Center where we have that segment covered. So everything coming out of that station will be going eastbound, southbound, and we're very confident that it'll exceed everyone's expectation. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our colleague Christine Kennan for the Metro Mobility briefing.
Oh, thanks for the introduction. So yes, my name is Christine Kennan. I'm the Senior Manager for Metro Mobility. And before I go into some of the details on the slide, just to set the stage for the Metro Mobility system, our service hours by community are not changing during Super Bowl. The extra service that Brian talked about on the regular routes, those are areas that we already provide 24/7 service, so we will not be increasing any service hours. And also our ride reservation system, our process will remain the same throughout the Super Bowl, so customers will really access Metro Mobility the same way they do now. But per federal regulations, we have any customer anywhere in the country that is certified on paratransit systems in their own community can come here and ride on our system for up to 21 days and be eligible. And to date, we have taken inquiries from customers who will be coming in out of town. So we're kind of hand-holding those customers to make sure that they understand our process and our booking reservations process. Since Metro Mobility operates under an advanced reservation system, we won't really know until we get a little closer to the big event dates what the capacity, the increased demand on our system will be relative to our capacity. So we're checking that every day. To date, we don't have any customers that are booking service to the convention center for the Super Bowl experience, but we're checking it every day, and of course, we'll respond to any increased demand. The other questions that we've had from our system are mostly from staff who are Metro Mobility customers who are working the convention center or at US Bank Stadium, and so they just want to understand what the impacts will be for their regular workday trips. But generally, we're focusing on mitigating what we know would likely be congestion delays, on-time performance impacts, and making sure that we're maintaining a high quality of service under federal regulations for our customers who may be not attending the events but still need their regular service. So in doing that, we're beefing up our operations plan. We're adding standby and extra board drivers. Our providers are ensuring that their capacity is high with drivers. In fact, right now we're about 98% of the budgeted plan across the system for the available operators, so we're pleased with that. We'll also be ensuring that we have a maximum we're maximizing our fleet availability. We're deferring some of our annual inspections and not doing those during Super Bowl week, and also our preventative maintenance inspections are being done after service hours whenever possible. As far as customer impacts for road closures and the major events, Nicolette Mall, we have designated bus stops that we've identified based on ride booking history would best serve those events and on locations nearby the closed streets. We are expanding our service hours and adding operations staff the weekend of Super Bowl to make sure that we can respond to service disruptions or emergencies. On game day, anyone ticketed for the game or staff working the game will have escort services provided by the NFL Mobility Assistance Program. So we have a designated stop close to the main entrance at US Bank Stadium. Customers arriving there from Metro Mobility will be assisted by NFL contracted staff to their seats at the stadium and post-game as well. For customers that are waiting for their bus to depart post-game, we'll have a warming bus at that stop so that no customer is waiting out in inclement weather for other customers to arrive. Mentioned the designated bus stops. We have designated key locations for customers that could be dropped off. Of course, customer can be dropped at any address, but we've identified for them on maps that we've posted on our website some of those best locations. And I want to thank Metro Transit facilities maintenance staff who've agreed to keep those designated stops clean for us in the event of snow or ice. Our contractors are recruiting ambassadors and are putting extra supervisors out in the field throughout Super Bowl week to assist customers in getting from those stops, which are really outdoor stops, to their destination if needed. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Bruce. No, to Brian.
Actually, yeah, I'll do one more if you'll indulge me. Just a quick review of the budget. One of our core principles that we referenced last time was to create a plan that was as neutral as possible with the budget so that we would not impact our regular operating budget. We did not want to have our regular customers be subsidizing essentially the extra service we're providing. And so this plan illustrates that principle, and it shows that between the game day passes, the additional ridership, and additional sales we expect, that is largely funding this additional service that we've been describing. We also have a major piece on the revenue side going towards advertising, and so all of this is advertising in addition to what would regularly be expected this time of year. Bruce Howard will give you some examples of what that looks like, but there's some really neat advertising that's already in the system going into these last couple weeks. And as we mentioned before, the police have a security grant that covers them on a one-for-one match, and so overall, we feel really good. Currently, we're projecting a slight positive variance, knowing that there's going to be some unexpected expenses that come in that we're going to be able to address, and we feel very comfortable and think that in the end, this group will be very happy that we're able to meet those needs. Over to Bruce.
Okay, good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. I'm Bruce Howard, Director of Customer Services and Marketing. Maybe first I'll just follow up on Brian's comment on the advertising. I don't have any of the examples of the advertising in here, but our own advertising, but not the advertising that we're selling. I can tell you that I think the estimate on that chart was $600,000 in advertising revenue, and we'll be well above that. We're already about $800,000 in advertising revenue. We're actually I think the latest number I saw, we've sold 31 wrap trains now to advertisers. So we're generating quite a bit of advertising revenue through our wrap trains. With that, though, I move on and talk a little bit about our marketing and communication efforts. You heard all of the planning that's gone into this event from all of the staff that preceded me, and now it's all about how do we communicate that and how do we make sure that everyone gets to where they need to go. I want to mention two campaigns that are going on here that Metro Transit is a part of. The first is the Know Before You Go campaign, and that's the NFL and local host committees transportation plan and communications plan to let people know how to get around. Everything from the air travel to ground transportation to what do you do when you're here to parking, all of that is covered in that Know Before You Go campaign, and Metro Transit is very prominent in that. In fact, if you go on to the website that they have set up, you'll see the big picture there. In the front of their Know Before You Go campaign is one of our light rail trains, so that's great. We've been working with them for quite a while. However, one of the things that when we thought about that was they haven't really promoted it that widely. I mean, you can find the information, but we thought we needed to do more than that. And so we needed to come up with our own campaign, and that's what we did. And that's the second campaign I want to mention here, and that's the campaign called We've Got Your Playbook for Super Bowl. And we really think that kind of captures the essence of what we've been talking about here. Whether you're one of the million or so visitors that are going to be here, or one of our 300,000 regular daily riders, or just a resident here who wants to experience some of this, Metro Transit has got you covered. We're going to be able to get you there. And that's what this whole idea about We Got Your Playbook theme is in our campaign. So we've been promoting this through a lot of traditional media, including using our own vehicles to put bus sides out there. That's the top of that screen. The photo there shows what that creative looks like. We've been doing interior cards on the buses and trains. We've been putting information out at the rail platforms. We have a radio spot that's actually running on 10 radio stations right now. Hopefully you'll get a chance to hear that. A couple of strategic billboards, and then we've got some printed advertising as well. For example, the Meet Minneapolis, a visitor guide, which appears in all of the hotel rooms in Minneapolis. We've also been using our social and online advertising. We have 45,000 people that follow us on Facebook, 27,000 that follow us on Twitter. We're using that and pushing that out. Also doing a lot of scheduled posts to talk about all of the service and things that the folks ahead of me talked about. And then we want people to do two things. We want them to, one, download the Metro Transit app if they don't have that already, and we want them to visit metrotransit.org/Super Bowl. That's kind of our microsite within our website that has all things Super Bowl. And you see on the front or the screen there, we have the front homepage of metrotransit.org, and at the very top you'll see that we have a track for regular rider and a track for visitors, and they're slightly different in terms of the information that you find there, but we've got it set up so that you could follow each one of those. Let me just talk very briefly about the mobile app. We've got all kinds of information available through the app that links back to our website, and we've also created, as Mark and Brian mentioned, 2 new passes for the Super Bowl. We have the Ultimate Fan Pass. That's the 10-day pass that people can buy if they're here and want to have unlimited rides on the system. And then, of course, the Game Day Fan Express Pass. Those are both available and only available on the Metro Transit app. So I like to say our customers are on the go and in the know when they've got that Metro Transit app. So we're encouraging them to do that. And then, as I mentioned, we encourage them to visit the metrotransit.org /Super Bowl site, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next page. But one of the other fun things that we did is we actually wrapped one of our trains with our own creative, and you can see that on the slide as well. The top photo there is a picture of that wrapped train on the outside. And for the first time, what we did is we also wrapped the inside of the train. So both the outside and the inside is wrapped, and you can see hopefully here, and if you get a chance hopefully to see it in person, it's really impressive. We've actually wrapped the floor, the sides, the ceiling of that thing, and our customers really love this. We do the holiday trains with something similar to that. We get a lot of positive feedback, and so we're hoping that our customers will enjoy that. Maybe just next talk a little bit about communications. You heard a little bit about the extra service that we're going to have out there, and we've been spending a lot of our time over the past couple of weeks really making sure we try to reach out to our riders, to employers, to communities to let them know about this extra service. So we've been out posting the stops where those routes operate that have that extra service, letting our commuters know, for example, that there's going to be trips leaving earlier out of downtown, and there's going to be trips leaving later than we typically have on some routes. So you can choose if you want to get out of town a little earlier on a particular or stay a little bit later. We're really pushing that. We've sent out an e-newsletter to all of the employers that work with us to get that word out through employers as well. And we've been working with the cities to get stuff out on their websites and any way that they can push that out as well. And Brian mentioned the park and ride service that starts this weekend from those 5 park and rides. We've really been doing a lot of outreach trying to make sure that the cities know about that and let their residents know that that's an easy and convenient way to get into and out of downtown Minneapolis to attend some of these events. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about schedules and detours because we haven't forgot about our regular riders. I mean, we're focusing on visitors. We want to get ridership on our system. We also know that we have a lot of regular riders that we need to serve as well. And one of the really good things I think that we've done is all this extra service is being put into our transit trip tools. So our online trip planner, our next trip system, the online schedules, all of those will have updated information on this extra service that we have. And the known detours that we know, that's all in there as well. So people can get that information and be up to date. The other thing that we're doing is we have a list of just all the detours out there. We have the ones that we already know about, like Nicolette Mall, Brian mentioned, 8th Street, some of those, that's out there. Another really neat thing that we're doing, though, is we're encouraging people to sign up for rider alerts. We call it a subscription service internally, but we'll send you a text or an email when something affects your route, and we're going to be able to actually push out this in real time during next week and the Super Bowl weekend. We're going to have staff in our control center. They'll be able to push out this information through text or email until 12 midnight, I think it is, during the week, and then until 2 a.m. on Super Bowl weekend. So we'll keep people as updated as possible. And those things also get posted to the website, so people can check the website and see that in real time. And then on-street help, we have a lot of employees that are going to be out being ambassadors, helping our customers out. We have something like 510 shifts over the 10 days at key locations. We're going to be out there making sure people can navigate through the system. And then also just wanted to mention that in our Transit Information Center, we're going to have some extended phone hours on Super Bowl weekend. We'll be open from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m. on February 3rd and 4th as well. So with that, I think we'd be available for any questions.
Great, thank you. I have one quick question about the ambassadors. Will the ambassadors for Metro Mobility be the same as the ones that we have across the transit system? No, those are different.
No, Madam Chair, members. The ambassadors for Metro Mobility will be are being organized by our contracted providers, and they are there especially to assist those customers that are getting dropped off at bus stops that are maybe a little bit further away from their destination because of road closures, or at the outdoor event sites, and just to assist that one-on-one customer care.
Will our ambassadors, the other Metro Transit ambassadors, have the information about the Metro Mobility, the special stops, so that they can direct people in terms of wayfinding if they encounter folks that are looking for those stations? Does my question make sense?
Yeah, it does, Madam Chair. Thank you. The maps are published, and certainly we are in cooperation with each other, Metro Transit Operations and Metro Mobility. So we'll make sure that those ambassadors have access to that information.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, Member
I have a quick question, and I've asked this before. So, what will be different on the platform starting next week that regular customers will see in regards to security?
Madam Chair, thank you. Starting this Friday, you'll start to see a gradual increase of presence of transit police officers and some of the key partners that have been assigned to work with us. It's going to be kind of low key this weekend, There'll be more people. There'll be some National Guard officers working hand in hand with our officers, and some federal air marshals, the Viper teams. We're going to have one Viper team working this weekend, just one shift a day. As we get closer and closer to game day, we have more and more resources dedicated, and it's rail platforms. It's key locations like the Mall of America Transit Station and the airport terminal. Some of the key bus stops, especially in downtown Minneapolis. That's a little bit event driven. There will be some presence here in St. Paul on Monday night on the 29th for the opening night ceremony at XL. There will be a lot of extra presence on the university on Saturday evening for the NFL Honors Program, which is at Northrop Auditorium at I think 5 o'clock on Saturday evening. So it's a little bit event driven, and it's a unique and challenging nut to crack. And this is one of the things we learned when we went to Houston. We got to Houston, and I had a meeting with the transit police in Houston on Friday afternoon, 2 days before the Super Bowl. I had to wait because they weren't ready to firm my appointment because they were in an all command staff meeting redoing their manpower plan. What drives that is not the NFL sanctioned events. We know what the NFL sanctioned events are right now. It's some of the other private hosted events that just pop up or we don't hit our schedule until the last minute where they're going to create a lot of congestion. So wherever we know there's going to be a lot of events at the Armory. Club Nomadics hosted several concerts at the Armory. So on those evenings, we're going to see a lot more transit police at Government Center and at US Bank Stadium platform, and if it's open. So it is largely event driven, but more and more presence as the week wears on.
So I appreciate the description, but you still didn't tell me what it's going to look like. I'm a visual learner, so I mean, tell me what the picture I should be seeing in my head when you say there's going to be an increase. Will I see one or two? And the reason I'm asking, sir, is that people have asked me this, and I just said, I can't respond because I really don't know. And maybe you're not at liberty, but I mean, are we going to see, talk about National Guards, we'll see people with weapons? And I mean, I'm really curious on what, if you can, tell me what that looks like so I can get this picture in my mind.
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
And we've been reticent to explain exactly what our security plan is because that defeats the purpose of having a plan. But in general, I will say that at the Mall of America and at the airport, because I don't think either one of these two places are going to shock anybody, you'll see at least one shift of National Guard each day, 5 of them paired with the 2 officers that already work, transit police officers that already work at the Mall of America, and probably 2 to 4 more transit police officers. So instead of having 2 transit police officers in the Mall of America Transit Station, you'll have 7 to 10 people during different parts of the day. Not all day long because we don't have the resources to staff it all day long, but through that busy time of the day when we have the most passengers coming and going. Very similar to the airport. We even though the National Guard officers are assigned to us, we accept responsibility for security on the platforms at the airport. And so there would be some National Guard officers assigned there together with transit police officers and in some cases federal air marshals. And instead of, right now you can come and go from the airport, you might see a transit police officer on a platform if you stop there to change trains or run upstairs and use the restroom or whatever. It's the difference at the airport. So you're going to see transit police officers or National Guardsmen or federal air marshals on the platform all day long, particularly starting about Wednesday. And going through Monday, we're supporting the airport police's efforts on Monday by staffing our facilities at the airport. In other words, both light rail platforms and the bus stops.
So when I go up to Raymond Avenue, what will I see?
Raymond Avenue, you might not see a lot different.
What Western?
Excuse me?
What on Western?
There, a lot of the platforms, again, will be event driven. There's simply not enough transit police officers that we could just put 2 or 3 cops on every one of those platforms. We'd love to. But what will happen is that we have these saturation teams of 10 to 20 transit police officers, and they'll be assigned to work sections of the light. And so if you're a normal rider, say between Capitol Rice and Snelling, I don't know what your experience might be. You might see transit police officers on your train or one of those platforms, once every few days. During the later part of next week, you're very likely to see transit police officers on every trip, either one of those platforms or on your train, because there'll be, a group of officers detailed in that section of the line.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions? Member Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not question, just a couple of comments. First, I'm sure that this is probably, on the one hand, exhilarating for you to do this complex project and terrifying, thinking of all the moving parts. So I just want to acknowledge that, and thanks for all the energy you threw at this to make this happen. Secondly, just to follow up the previous presentation when we were all together on this, is just a reminder, the most important security piece in all this are people. That's also the weakest link. It's really important that the judgment is exercised in a crisis moment to say, take a breath, think, and don't do the wrong thing that is going to get the rest of this reputation just out of whack in 13 seconds. So it's just old guy advice. Thanks.
Madam Chair, may I?
Please.
That's a very valid comment, Council Member, and I'm glad you brought it up. Every officer, whether it's a Minneapolis police officer, transit police officer, Bloomington police, or anybody that's coming from out of state to participate in this, is going through training hosted by the Super Bowl Public Safety Committee. And one of the things we do is we give every one of them a playbook like this. And I want to say 3/4 of this playbook is to stress the kind of points that you just vocalized. Mm-hmm. It's about being an approachable presence. It's about not making snap judgments, taking a breath, evaluating the situation, calling a supervisor, and not move, especially not move immediately to arrest if something looks like it's going wrong. We really want to be like we were during the All-Star game. We really want to be an approachable and pleasant presence here in the Twin Cities for all of our guests and, of course, the community we serve every day.
Thank you. Other questions, member or comments?
Madam Chair, I also want to thank you. I think you've taken extraordinary efforts to make our regular riders feel as important as the Super Bowl visitors. 2 questions. With the final transit plan, I'm concerned about HCMC. How close will our buses be able to get the workers and the patients to the hospital?
Madam Chair, council members, so when 6th Street does close, we still will be able to maintain operations on 6th Street as far as Chicago. And then at Chicago, we'll have to detour south to 8th Street and 8th Street over to 13th, back up to 6th to the freeway. And so we're still going to be able to provide service at that high boarding stop at HCMC. We're confident that we got to a place and we'll continue to maintain that because we know how important that is for workers, for people traveling there, for patient care, or for visiting.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Second question, I'm on social media and I see a lot of invitations to protests, some that sound peaceful, others that sound disruptive. How is law enforcement going to approach that?
Council member? We track social media. We have a couple of different intelligence centers that are already stood up and working today already. And one of the things they do is they're actually looking for significant threats to the Super Bowl or to our community to try to be on the front end of them. And it isn't just social media they're tracking; it's all sorts of intelligence from the national intelligence community. But one of the things they do is that they do track social media because, as we know, as we've learned from incidents all over the country, is sometimes these people that go off their rocker, for lack of a better term, and try to hurt a bunch of people, indicate that on their social media ahead of time. Those are the things that keep me awake at night. Our protesters, the planned protests, they don't. We deal with them. We deal with them respectfully. We give them a chance to be heard. And I think I'm aware of probably most of the ones that you've referred to. The public safety groups reaching out to them to try to help them organize. And I'll tell you that the plan in Minneapolis for planned protest is to provide police officers to give them an escort on their parade route so that none of the protesters become injured traffic. That same approach should be taken during the Super Bowl, and there is a place right outside the main gate for the protesters to gather should they choose to do that. So while you're quite correct to say, is there a plan and what happens if they have protesters? I will tell you that there is a plan, but that's not what keeps me awake at night.
Excellent. Member Reynoso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This plan is, I mean, as much as you could share, is really developed, and I think you guys have done a very thorough and phenomenal job. It sounds like it's ready, set, go. And obviously we will probably hit some hiccups, but I really want to thank you for going through the process and being very thorough. I know some of the concerns about having access to the hospital, the workers, emergency situations. It sounds like you guys have been able to eliminate that as an issue. So I congratulate you. Now it's time to get going. One thing I do want to warn is, there's a rumor in the tendency by Bill Belichick and the Patriots to steal playbooks. So be careful with
I'll keep this one in my pocket.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on this item? Well, thank you all very much for this plan and for the presentation. Really appreciate it and appreciate your hard work. So the next item on the agenda are reports from council members. Do council members have reports that they would like to share? Member Munt?
Madam Chair, on Monday, I had a chance to go to the Actualizing Equity Summit at the University of Minnesota. It was a really extraordinary event. The president of Policy Link addressed the group, and there was a local panel of folks who were preparing to go to the Policy Link Summit this summer. And that included Melvin Carter, and it was folks from communities of color who are talking about how we really move the dial on equity. They view the Met Council as a strong partner, and it was energizing.
Excellent, thank you. Other reports? Member Elkins.
Yes, went to the Sensible Land Use Coalition last Thursday, and had Elliot Eisenstadt, who's a national economist, used to be the chief economist for the Home Builders Association, and very well attended, and fascinating presentation as well. And among the things he highlighted is that the home builders are building lots of homes, but they're all big homes, not at the size of homes that are mostly in demand. And it was kind of a what's going on here sort of a thing. Also attended the Municipal Legislative Commission's annual legislative breakfast up in Plymouth on Friday, and had a good conversation with a number of legislators and local municipal elected officials as well. So we're at that event, and that went really well also. So.
Great. Others? Member Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday we were out in Carver County. There was a meeting with the Carver County leaders, and then followed up by a county board workshop where we presented the transportation policy plan. It was received very well. I think we had a great dialogue, and really just want to highlight that the county board and the county staff members were very, very complimentary of our staff and the engagement process that we've been going through with the transportation policy plan. So it was very nice to hear and led to a really good discussion.
Excellent. Others? Well, I will share. I had the opportunity on January 8th to spend some time with the Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities at the Choo Choo with Member Rodriguez in Loretto, and it was a fun dialogue to hear from all of the mayors. I also attended an Anoka County annual legislative workshop and had the opportunity to hear from them about their legislative platform this coming session as they presented to their local legislators. Tomorrow is the 50th anniversary event at the U, and so looking forward to that. There's been a lot of preparation for that. And that's it. Any other thoughts or comments? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?